I am Lubeck, Ancient One, and I'm going to show you how the snake is swallowing the earth. There's time on the earth. There's prosperity and safety, and there is some kind of a bubble of divine protection over the earth. That is called heavenly energy, grace energy. And then there is something that wants to create a new way, create a new system. There's this voice, take it down. It doesn't work. I do not win in that system of thinking. Right? So there is something coming upon the earth that is trying to change everything. So that is called the snake. And you have to understand where the power comes from. Once upon a time there was a Roman Empire on this earth. The Jews had a promised land. It was a godly kingdom. And all of a sudden, 300 after Christ, the Roman Emperor subjected to Christianity. And so the Roman Empire timeline became Grace Empire. We already had a godly kingdom. And then we all of a sudden had on the earth Grace Empire. This is for you very important to understand. This is the element of heavenly energy upon the earth. So all of a sudden, years later, the Vatican became corrupted, and then the Orthodox split off from this timeline, whereby the timeline called Grace Empire was divided in two. And then the Protestants did it again, whereby the Grace Empire timeline was divided in three. But it's one and the same timeline. And every time when the timeline corrupts itself, the timeline changes. But it is still the same energy called Grace Empire, 3 in 1. So that's called the West. Western nations, from America to the United Kingdom, Germany and France, are the allies of Israel. That is the cultures of the West. Everywhere in the West are churches. So if you say, I don't like Israel, or I hate Zionism, or hate the Jewish blah blah blah, that's called Jew hatred. And that used to be a bad thing. But this new thing that's coming upon the earth is calling the Jews the Nazis. It's calling the Jews the genocide committers. So there are people who are against the Jews, doing politics against the Jews, and there are people doing politics for the Jews. So I'm going to break down the future for you with that understanding. God made a covenant with Abraham. He said to Abraham, his first son was made with an Egyptian slave. And God said to Abraham, that son is not my chosen son, but he will inherit many nations. Covenant. Second covenant. God said to Abraham, that promised son of yours will inherit a kingdom called Israel. And then Jesus' covenant said, that's called grace. So here in this Grace Empire, the Germans went after the Jews, and the Americans stopped the Jews from vanishing from the earth, whereby the Jews went karmically in debt to the Americans, whereby the Jewish destiny and the Jewish energy went into the Roman Empire timeline. This is for you very important to understand. So the timeline that you are living in, and that I'm living in, is fueled by three elements of godly authority. Grace energy, Abrahamite Arabian energy, and Abrahamite Jewish energy. And that keeps our world that we know intact and safe, ladies and gentlemen. So you can run out of this birthright. As you see, that is slowly happening. Inflation, or rumors of wars. Life is a struggle for most. So this grace element upon the earth is no longer that strong. Look at the Orthodox split off. Russia, there's a lot of Arabian energy going in there. It's not about Jesus Christ the only way. It's more about let's keep the peace on the earth and accept all religions. The Catholic energy is the same way. This exclusive Jesus, the only way to heaven, type of energy is nowhere to be found in this timeline called Roman timeline. So this energy is, let's call it perverted. It is twisted. It's still alive, but it is twisted. So the Bible says that in the end of days, God will draw all the nations to Israel to do the battle of Armageddon. You have to understand that. It says God will draw them. He will lure them in. Right? So the Bible says that in the end of the world, there will come an empire called New World Order, and he will call 666 Earth Energy. And that will divide the land of Israel between the Palestinians and the Jews, dividing, quote-unquote, God's land. And the Antichrist will force a 7-year contract of peace between the two. That's called the 666 energy. So, to understand the timeline, how the snake is eating the world, you have to understand the difference between grace energy and earth energy. Adam eat apple, got cursed, and his sons did this, got cursed, and his sons and this son and that son, and 190 nations later. It's a karmic account, not blessed, not with God. Earthly energy. That's manifests like this. Why is a Jew more than a Palestinian? Why doesn't have a Palestinian the same right as the Jew? Does that book says that this? What book? Right. So that's called logic, earthly logic. Why can't a woman be like a man? Why does a woman need to be like this? Why does a man need to be like that? Why can't you? That's called the earth energy. So heavenly energy, by the grace of God, is a certain culture. And this culture is always pro-Israel, because God is pro-Israel. The Bible says whoever curses Israel will be cursed by God and blessed by God if you bless Israel. So when the Westerners are becoming anti-Israel in their actions, the spirit of Antichrist, 666 earth energy, is entering their authority system. And you see one after the other nation, actually the majority of nations, are under the influence of this energy. There are only 4 nations left who actively support Israel. Look at their societies. Look at their customs. This feminism, this gayism, this transgenderism. Your karma is mirrored to your mirror. Your destinical opposite, your woman. Western woman doesn't have much interest in the long-term marriage. There are movements here in the West that call out for, no man type of thing. So the karma of the West is super negative. And most Western nations are doing an anti-Israel agenda. And the Jews have been attacked by the Iranians. So the moment you run out of birthright, you get a rival. So the Chinese are making bricks. Protecting each other, attacking this Roman Empire, Grace Empire timeline. And at one point, it will become a battle. And all of a sudden, the Westerners will no longer be able to resist this New World Order Earth energy, because the generational blessings are running out. Every time the generational blessing runs out, another nation will become anti-Israel, cast out from God, to be entering the agenda, to divide the land of God, to play the playlist, Book of Daniel and Book of Revelation, going into the end-time narrative. Grace is running out. I'm showing the elements of the timeline, how you can see how far you are in the development.